Great. So we'll just do a couple housekeeping items first. Good morning. Thank you guys for joining today's October 11th, 2023. This is our V3 implementation call. Couple kind of housekeeping items. Please remember, these are a conversation. We encourage participation. We will have to ask you to raise your hand to come off mute if you'd like to speak, but we're happy to do that, or you can always type in the chat. These are recorded and posted on our YouTube page, usually the same week. So if you have any questions or want to review anything, those are certainly there. We certainly welcome and encourage your participation. So with that, I will actually hand it over to Lauri to start with stakeholder introductions, I believe.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ben. And again, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We have this tradition where we are introducing people that are on the call. As you know, our audience is both state data managers and state representatives, as well as some federal partners and vendors on the call. And we hope that by getting to know each other, it will lead to some increased collaboration, working together, and also have a little fun to start our meeting out. So our stakeholder we're introducing today, when asked, what do you like to do to relax or unwind? They like to spend time with their husband of 34 years and their grandson, Landon, and granddaughter, Annalise. So if you know who this is, feel free to type your guess in the chat. Something interesting about them, they were the cause of death ICD-10 coder for 5 years with Missouri Vital Records from 2011 to 2015. So that may give you another clue as well. What do you like best about your job? They enjoy helping EMTs and paramedics with our system. I also enjoy learning systems like LMS and Elite. And any guesses on who this is today? I know several of you on the call know her. This is Teresa Bates. Teresa is from Missouri, and she serves as a program assistant, lead office support, admin of license management system, and admin of the lead system. So many titles there in Missouri. So thank you, Teresa. If you're here, feel free to turn your camera on, wave, say hello. Thanks for joining us today. And we have at least one new state that turned green last week. Sorry, we may have another one close behind, possibly today. But congratulations to Utah for turning green and successfully submitting version 3.5 records. And I know we have several states. I hope I have listed them all here. If you are close within a week or two, we know we have resources and are working with your vendor and are close to being ready to go in those states as well. So I believe our count is up to 26 states that have turned green, and we are excited to bring everyone else on board in the next few months. And then the next topic is mine as well. I wanted to introduce a new member of the NEMSQA TAC today. His name is John Britt. John, if you can turn your camera on and show him your face and wave hello as well. John comes from us as a new business data analyst here at the TAC, and he comes from North Carolina, where he has been a longtime paramedic. He's been a teacher and a trainer. He most recently was director of operations at a medical clinic there in North Carolina, and he has a bachelor's in political science and a master's in public administration and healthcare, and we are so excited to have him be joining our team. So thanks, John. Some of you may know him. I know he has been around a while and hopefully is a familiar face to many as well. I'm going to pass it back to Ben for our next topic.
Yep, and it looks like it's going to be 351 version change requests from Jen.
Good morning, everyone. I am going to share my screen, and hopefully everyone can see it. There's a couple of items for this week, and the first one is anything that we're talking about today. Again, just a reminder, they came in between the definitely moving forward and not moving forward this time. So they're in the middle. That's why we're discussing them. This first one is add a de-agency element, and that would be a recommended or optional element to indicate if the agency that is reporting is state licensed or not. Some of the conversation around that request is that not all states will license like a wheelchair transport, or if they're a non-transporting EMS agency, they might not be state licensed. They report, but they may not actually have a license from the state. So that's what this would be used for. Are there any questions or comments? Raise your hand. We can get you unmuted. And hear some opinions on this particular one.
Hey, Jen, this is Clay. Could you increase the size of your screen there? It'd be
Increase the size of my screen. It is full screen.
Oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
zoom in a little.
Yeah, zoom in a little. I'm sorry. Yeah, just at the bottom right. Yeah, that'd be great. And then just as a reminder, if
That's
this
big enough.
Oh, yeah, that's really helpful.
Okay.
And then just to mention to folks, if this is added, this would remain an optional element. Jen, do you know who? Do you remember who requested this? Was this Ann in Arizona?
I believe it was Ann in Arizona. I was just looking at the participants list to see if she is on, and I don't see her today. And usually she joins. And this is one of those ones where she requested it. Those were the reasons she gave. It also affects reporting in Arizona if they have to run their reports on state licensed versus non-licensed agencies. There are some comments in the chat. Felicia from Utah said, I'd support optional element. David Saylor from Beyond Lucid said, seems like a data that the state should know without the vendors submitting it.
Yeah, it seems like up at the annual meeting, there were other states that supported this idea or had comments about this idea. Feel free to share those again.
And Bill from Colorado, this would be beneficial for reporting purposes. And I think this is one of those ones that falls into, in some states, it would be more useful than in other states. But because it's an optional or recommended element, they would not need to collect it unless they needed it. Okay, any other comments or raised hands? I'm not seeing any raised hands, but I'm hoping I'm not just missing them.
Yeah, no other raised hands. Jan, looks at this. Yeah, so it looks like there's support for this one moving forward.
Yeah, and it seems like the support does come from the states where it would be useful for the state data managers. E-Arrest 09. This is one of the ones there was quite a bit of conversation about removing the compressions hand only CPR. And I apologize, I meant to have this already open to the correct page. There we go. And I will zoom in here as well. So currently these are the values that are available in E-Arrest 09. The request had been to eliminate compressions hand only CPR. In the original request, it made a note that this was a brand type of training for CPR compressions. There was some discussion at the annual meeting about whether or not the compressions manual really was the same thing as compressions hands only CPR. And then just because I don't have this screen up, oops, sorry about that. This was for removing that. Are there any concerns about removing it? Is compressions manual the same thing? And I really thought I'd see some hands get raised on this one.
Yeah, the only comment I'll make here, just to remind folks, the definition, and you can go up just a little bit maybe to show the definition, is this the CPR used by EMS? So this isn't like a bystander CPR.
Oh, Samantha's got her hand up. Ben, can you unmute her?
So why was this added in the first place? I assumed this was part of the CARES harmonization.
Oh, that's a good question, Sam. We haven't checked with CARES in regards to this request. Have we, Jen? I don't know that we have, and that's a really good point.
We can look, we can check that out with CARES. And then John Britt put in the, hey, John, if the issue is the trademark name, then we could just remove the CPR since it's under the CPR section anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point as well.
So yeah, let me go back. I will check with CARES to see if this is something that they track specifically as the type of CPR that EMS can provide. And then I will get back to you on that one next week. Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns on this request? Okay, so the next one, and this is one that there was a lot of conversation at the annual meeting about, and it's adding a value for absconding patient, whether they have absconded, at a stoplight, from the scene, when you get to the hospital, but they've basically taken off. It is happening more and more. It's becoming more commonplace. And so there was a request to add a way to track that in the disposition section. And I will pull that up. Okay, so the request is specifically to add it to disposition 28, 30, and 31. Sorry about that extra 30 there. 28, 30, and 31. Currently, patient evaluation and care, these are the values that are here. Patient evaluated and care provided. And so there was a lot of discussion about the wording and what would be used. One of the ones that was thrown around at the annual meeting, not thrown around, I'm sorry. One of the ones that was discussed at the annual meeting was like patient evaluated and ran from scene or anything like that. So I kind of expect everyone to have opinions or have things to say about how to word this. If it's necessary. Everyone seemed to agree that it's happening more and more. And Sister Caitlin, that will be an expensive request to implement. Was that for the E-Arrest 09 or was that for the absconding patient? Oh, there we go. Do we really need to make a distinction between refused care and fled? So I know we have a few state data managers that are on the call, and this was one that came through a vendor that had been asked for by multiple state data managers. So I'd love to have you guys speak up. Hey, can you unmute Doug Butler? Doug, I know that we had talked about this at one point, that there was a couple of different states that had made this request to add custom elements for that.
Yeah, we're getting this request. We've probably received it about 2 or 3 times a week at this point by agencies and states. And I agree with them. The patient is not refusing care. they're literally just walking away. It's basically they're terminating the care. And we're seeing this where they're just requesting rides to the area to hospital and getting out before they get unloaded into the hospital to get ride into the central city is what we're seeing. I think there needs to be an option. This is coming more and more, and I'm not sure the wording. I don't like, refused or run away. I put in there patient terminated care. They terminated the care might be a good word to word, good wording, but it's something that we're seeing that is really needed.
And we do have a comment from Marta in Rhode Island. I think this would be a good option. As someone who used to work in EMS, we have had patients who fled during care and no proper option to select. Jay in Wyoming suggested patient leaves care providers.
Looks like there's a comment from David. He has his hand up, Jen.
Ben, can you unmute?
David Saylor.
Everyone should be able to unmute themselves for the next little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, David, go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like.
Okay, try now.
Ben, can you unmute him just in case there's a problem?
I can only ask to unmute. It won't actually let me unmute him.
Okay.
So we've got a couple other, Beth Remus in Boston EMS. We use patient eloped over the radio, is their term there. Kaylin from Image Trend, patient terminated care would protect crews as well for the potential fallback for not getting a refusal signed. So it does sound like we definitely need it. It's the wording that we're running into and running up against. David, are you able to unmute? Still not letting you.
Here, we'll just do this.
Jen, this chat in Kansas while you guys are trying to get David squared away. I'm sitting here racking my brain a little bit around it, just from hearing some of the comments and this and that. It seems to be some of the issue is when they're either during transport, people jumping out, people leaving, people getting to the hospital and leaving when they get to the hospital after the transport piece. And it makes me wonder if it's the right spot here or if it should be more in the transport side of things, because at the end of the day, for me, and my view may be wrong, you show up, you evaluate the patient, they agree to go in your vehicle. At that point, they're either agreeing to allow you to care for them or they're not, but they're still wanting you to transport them. But should there be an option on the transport piece that says, patient transported by this EMS unit, however, when we got to the hospital or whatever, they absconded, one of these other options there, because that's kind of the discussion going on in my brain with myself is it better in patient evaluation care or should it be more something under the transport side? And I feel like if there's been a transport, it should be somewhere on the transport piece for them to do that. And then I also think that we shouldn't negate the narrative. Because the narrative is also a spot where people can defend themselves on why they couldn't get a refusal or something like that.
So Chad, if thank you for the comment. It was really helpful. If the patient fled kind of after initial treatment or after initial evaluation, then we would just continue to classify that as refused care. Is that what you're saying?
That's kind of my opinion. My opinion is if the patient leaves at any point and doesn't let us provide care, then they are refusing care. I mean, whether it's right after I assess them, whether it's after I start some care, no, sorry, they refuse care. And then I would document that further in my narrative. Now, I do feel, and I do see the issue, even though we don't have it in Kansas as much, I do understand the issue and the concern of, hey, we have this patient loaded in the ambulance, and the minute we got to the hospital, they were just looking for a ride and jumped out and walked off. And now I think that does create a little bit of an issue that may need to be documented somehow. But I think if they walk off before you've ever started transporting, I think that's still just a patient refused care.
Got it.
And the original request was to add it in the E-disposition 28, and so I'm not as good at remembering what all of them are. I'm sorry. Patient evaluation care, as well as the transport disposition, and then the 2830 and the refusal. I wanted to double check, make sure I got it right, and the reason for refusal, so that it could be clear that it wasn't just that they didn't sign something, that it was that they took off. There are a couple other comments. Bill suggested transported by this EMS unit left prior to transfer of care for E-disposition 30 as a suggestion. Kevin said it might need to be in both, and I think he means both elements. Corin, I'll let Clay talk about whether or not we get an opinion from PWW. Sorry about that. And Adam, this value doesn't dictate whether it was transport or not. That is, it could be used with either no transport or after transport. So it'd be in the other location. And Nick Spring from First Due, would you want a date time field to accompany this?
And David is back and I think can unmute now.
Oh, good.
Oh, yes. I was going to say something that's already been mentioned a few different ways about the differences between billing for a refusal and billing for somebody who ran away. But it sounds like that's kind of a thread of discussion already, so not too much to add.
Yeah, David, can you expand on that? Because in regards to billing, that's really not been discussed.
So if you're billing for a refusal, then often you'll have a signature document associated with that refusal. And so if you don't have that document, you might not be able to bill it as a refusal.
So you're saying adding this value would make it clearer whether they refused or whether they absconded.
Right. So either in the disposition fields that are being discussed, or potentially as a signature reason, which I don't love, but it might make sense. And possibly as an additional element of disposition, which is, was care transferred to the destination? Like we took them to hospital A, but they didn't go in. It's kind of a few different ways this could go in my mind.
Yeah, thank you.
And then Adam from Zoll said he believes we split up the disposition items so we could easily mix and match between the different types of dispositions. So he thought this may be best to only appear in one place. And Karin said maybe it only needs to be added to E-disposition 31, reason for refusal release. And Sister Caitlin said E-disposition 31 would be the cheapest place in terms of impact on development and existing user created reports for a new value to cover the situation.
Yeah, Caitlin made a great point earlier in the chat as well, right? That there's lots of rules, Schematron rules that are kind of associated with these four E-disposition elements, and so adding values here would be a lot of additional work just to rework Schematron rules. It could be a lot of work just to rewrite Schematron rules. So.
And Doug, not to pick on you, Doug, but do you think with the requests that you've been getting from the different states that adding it to E-disposition 31, reason for refusal, would satisfy their requests?
I'm not sure. I was just thinking about that. My concern is there's so many rules around that already with the refusals in place. This seems like it's a new increasing problem in EMS, something that we should be looking at across every state and at the national level, is this really what EMS is becoming now, a taxi service to move people because they just can't get another ride? I want to make sure we're capturing this data in an efficient way that is protecting not only the EMS providers, but the agencies and collecting national data. One concern, I know Adam brought up or Nick may brought up the billing. This is where there's a lot of our requests are stimulating from the client side. This is happening, and these records are being sent to their billing company because of how the dispositions are set up. Yes, we transported them, but the care was never transferred, and it's causing some havoc. As in, hey, we're trying to bill this record. Technically, legally, we shouldn't be billing this record because we didn't fully complete the transport. So that's kind of where our agencies are asking for a solution, because these records are unfortunately making it to their billing systems.
And then Marta also added that most of the patients that flee from care are typically patients with psychiatric, mental health, behavioral health emergencies that may be required to be transported to the ED, even if they do not want to go. They elope during the transport or right before getting to the hospital. So once the transport is started, it just doesn't get completed. Are there other vendors on the call that have gotten this type of request from their EMS provider agencies or from their states, if they're a state receive and process system? And Adam said, I haven't heard this request, although it makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like we still need to determine where it's needed. I think that is pretty clear, but where it needs to be, where the best place to meet the requirements for all the different stakeholders, right? From the EMS clinicians completing the PCRs, the billing folks, the provider agencies, and the state data manager, so they can report on it. I think that's the piece we're trying to figure out is the best place for that.
Yeah, Jen, what do you think if we work up a couple of scenarios and bring those back to this?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like maybe we need to give options and look at it. So, yep. So I will say on the call, if there's anybody that's shy about speaking up or shy about putting information in the chat, please feel free to reach out and send an email to the TAC, either through the help desk, or you can contact any one of us directly. If you have an idea or a thought that you'd like to have included in that scenario build up or anything like that, don't be shy. Let us know what you think. The worst thing that could happen is no one says anything and we do it in a way that's unhelpful. So please get your input in, and we'll bring some different scenarios back in one of the future meetings.
And Jen, I missed the maintenance update, which was also you.
Oh, okay. Good. I'm glad, because I missed it too. So maintenance is scheduled for October 17th and 18th this month. We will let you know if there's going to be any disruption to services. I'm sure you guys have seen the emails. We try to keep you in the loop. If there's any emergency maintenance that has to be done, we'll let you know that as well. Or if you experience any issues outside of the maintenance window, please let us know. And then I'm sorry, I don't have I can stop sharing now so that you could share.
Okay, we're going to head over to Lauri for change logs and notes for state data sets.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben. And I can share my screen here, and I can put a link to this document as well in the chat in just a moment. Are you guys seeing the document? Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And just wanted to let you guys know this best practice sheet was updated last July, so July of 2022. And we've had a request recently from vendors specifically that we remind states of one of the best practices listed in here. And that is that you include the effective date if it's effective immediately, that you state that, or if there's a delayed date when you want it to go into effect, if you can make vendors aware of that and include that in your change log notes. And so let me skim this document here and just show you. I'll share this, as I said, and it's also available on our website, but it gives some good recommendations here. It also gives some examples of how you can document things in your change notes. And let me state at this point too, I know as states have turned green, we've had this conversation, but just as a reminder, or if you've not turned green yet, part of the version 3.5 change and update is that you will no longer need to save your state data set when you make changes and email it to the TAC. As you make those changes in your software, it will automatically be updated in your state data set and automatically be updated on your state page at our website at the NEMSQA TAC. So you no longer need to email in your state data set as you make changes. Different for the Schematron. Schematron, you still will need to save and email in the changes to us there. So any questions on that? I'll put a link to this document in the chat as soon as I'm done here. And then let me share next. This that we shared recently on a V3 call as well. We are trying to help with the communication between vendors and states as you're getting close to transitioning, letting them know what step you're at, or if you have a transition date that you've shared with us, we want to share that as well. And so after we shared this last time, I heard from a few states that asked me to update their plans on here. If you see your state on here, let me know if the information we have is correct, or if anything needs to be updated or changed, please let me know. And we will be sharing this regularly with vendors. And so let me scroll down here so everyone can see their state. And we do need to remove Utah as they are now transitioned. Hopefully this list will be shrinking soon, but look over this. Let me know if you have changes. You can either email me directly or create a help desk ticket and we can get your information updated as we know it.
Lauri, I have a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh, we do, okay.
From Florida, is the file size limit issue resolved on the state data set? And I'm not
heard of. Jen, do you know an update there?
So if you're, sorry, I'm trying to share my video. It has not been resolved yet. If your state data set is above 6 megs, we do have to make alternative methods of submission. And that is the way it was explained to me, and I'm sure for all the tech people, you'll laugh, but you're used to me getting the words wrong. It's basically a hard-coded limit. So there has to be, it's a much bigger change than just changing a number.
So Jen, just to follow up there, so can they submit if the file size is larger than 6 megs and we work around it, or are they prohibited until it's fixed?
Nope, we work around it. They just need to contact and send me an email and we will work out a way for you to submit your file.
Thanks, Jen.
And then I think Doug from Kentucky here had a question too. What about changes to facility lists? Do we manually send, or will they be automated in the process also? Facility list is, good question, Doug. That's part of your state data set. And so that will automatically be updated. Agencies, facilities, all of that will be automatically updated. So we hope that will be an improvement and make the process easier.
If you do also include for your EMS provider agencies on your state page an Excel spreadsheet list of facilities, that does have to be manually sent in and posted to the website.
That's true. Yeah, if there's a separate list posted. Any other questions? All right, I will put a link to this document and I'll pass it back to Ben.
All right, so next we're headed over to Jen again to talk about state submission summary reports.
Yes, it's your turn. All right, so I am sharing my screen again, and what you're going to see here is something that we've been asked for quite a bit. We do not have it available for you to run for yourselves, but we're going to put it on a schedule where you can reach out to your TAC team and get some of the information. This is the comparison by state, and I probably shouldn't show. Clay, is it okay to share? All the states are listed. Is that I didn't even think about that part of it. We're okay to share it?
Are you asking me, Jen?
I am asking you, Clay.
I think we are. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't see a concern.
All right,
Yeah, we're good.
perfect. So I was like, oh, wait, it has all the states, and usually we ask one state. So what this is a comparison between your total EPCRs that you have submitted to the TAC. This is the unique PCR count. And the unique count of agencies for 340, 350 submissions compared to your most recent state data set. And so these were pulled on 9/30. So your state data set that was submitted as of 9/29, that's the number of agencies that you had listed. And this is a way that we can let you know how you're doing on your submissions once you've turned green and the data has started to flow. As your agencies start to switch over within your state. There is a request to create something like this that will be accessible that you can run for yourselves, but right now it's not available, so you do need to come to us. We hope that this will help you as you track your transition within your state. Clay or Lauri, did you want to add anything to that? I know we've all, the team has worked hard to get this available.
Yeah, Jen, maybe just one comment so that so the count you'll see here as we release this on a weekly basis, the count here will be from the beginning of the year and the next week will be added, right? So it's kind of an accumulative sum for the year.
It is. This is going to be year to date. Right now it's being run on Tuesdays. So it's going to be year to date to Monday as of when it's ran on Tuesday, right? So it could be off by a couple hundred based on if you sent more Tuesday morning kind of a thing, but it should be pretty close to accurate. We're not releasing it. We can pull right now. We're hoping to get this report on a weekly basis that we can then, if you request it, we can let you know what your numbers are. Karen says, can you scroll down on the spreadsheet? So I'm thinking she wants to see South Dakota. There you go. Wait, sorry. Judy says, how does this differ from the cumulative total in the submission report website? So I think you're talking about the state submission report. That is run for 2 rolling weeks, I believe. So that's not that doesn't have the year-to-date information on it.
Well, I think that submission dashboard doesn't separate out 3-4 records from 3-5 records, right, Jen?
It does for if down in the section for like demographic failures, it'll say 3-4 reports versus 3-5 reports.
Oh, yeah.
In that one section. Jay in Wyoming, thoughts on having an agency listed that rarely or has never submitted a report? Do other states have that issue? Okay, so that's a question for everyone. Jay's wondering if there's other states that are having issues for agencies that are in their agency submission list, but rarely, if ever, report. Is there anyone else that has that issue? And Sheree, in Florida, when agencies change to V3.5, do they have to submit new demographic file, or the existing 3.4 demographic file will be accounted? So the decision was made that a new demographic is not required for version 3.5. But in states where it may have been a long time since they updated their demographic file, it might be a good time to do that. So no, you do not have to have a new demographic once you go to version 3.5.
Can you just go down a little bit more, Jen?
Yep.
Wisconsin wanted to see where they were at. Yeah, and then it looks like lots of people responded to the question about other states.
Yeah, Jay,
Scroll up a little
there's
bit.
all kinds that are saying, yep, I do, we do, yes. So that's Arkansas, Massachusetts, Nevada, Colorado, Florida, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure where T Wright is from off the top of my head. I apologize. But so there's lots of people that are having that issue as well.
Let's talk about that a little bit, Jen, right? So if they've never submitted a report, we of course wouldn't have a record for them, but I guess we could run a total list like by year of something of the number of agencies that have submitted.
So right now we have the current composition of the warehouse report that will list agencies who have successfully submitted, that they can pull that information off of that report themselves for which agencies have submitted. And that has all of the data forever in it that they can look at.
So you're saying that if they wanted to find out who's never submitted, that they could pull that list and then compare it to their list within their state to determine who has never submitted.
Yes. And there's also in some states where they have changed the D agency 01 and 02 values. So you need to be aware of that. So it's definitely something that they're going to want to look at. And Jay saying, is there a better way to address this?
Yeah, it's a great question. It looks like Doug has his hand up.
Yeah,
Doug.
my item comes into the demographic files for 3.5. I can wait if you want to keep on talking about the current topic.
Oh, thanks, Doug. Yeah. I'm just trying to think if there is something better that we could do that would be helpful. We of course can. Does that? Yeah, Jen.
So
yeah,
if they've never submitted a demographic file, we're not going to know that agency exists, right? So,
right, that's where they'd have to prepare our list of what they have in the state.
Yeah. So it's really driven by your state data set would probably be a good place to start. And we can take it back, or we can have a discussion about different thoughts and ideas to help with this.
It seems like, Jen, it also seems like we have that report. I'll take a look at it. It's on the state page, but we have that dashboard that we've put together that looks at how long it took for agencies to report. And there, I think we have the count of the number of records that they provided by a time frame. I'll take a look at that. I mean, it might just be, if this is a common question, maybe it'd be valuable to do a little bit of a training to see if there is a dashboard or how you could use the dashboards to answer these questions. I think that dashboard has the number of records as they've submitted. So you could again look for those, as Jay mentioned, those agencies who rarely submit.
Right. And Jay says this includes agencies that go out of business or bought up by another company. And we can look at what we have available, but I think it's going to come down to a lot of state knowledge and what you have going on in the state. But we can definitely look and see what we have that exists if there's something that may help you. I think the current composition of the warehouse is probably going to end up being the best source, but let's take that back to the team and kind of roll it around and see what else we can come up with. I see a couple of other questions. Charles Chaz in New Mexico, does this include agencies that submit via a third-party vendor versus direct inputting? This is any records that have been submitted to your state, regardless of third-party or direct entry. And Richard says, can you do the numbers by both the numbers in the state data set and the number of DEM files? No, keeping it to the state data set, we can do, but the DEM files that would be pulling from a different system. So I don't think we can add those on there. We'll look into it though.
What,
This report you're showing right here is to look at the number of agencies that are submitting 3.5 records, right? So
Right.
so the and there doesn't need to be a new DEM file for 3.5, right? So we have a list of all the DEM files that have ever been submitted to us. But that's
And that wouldn't take out, we wouldn't be able to tell which ones have gone out of business, which ones that kind of ties right into what Jay was saying, right? Is like we won't know here at the TAC which ones are no longer existing agencies, because the DEM files will sit forever in our system because their EMS files sit forever in our system. Any other questions on the 350's I call it the tracker report. I don't know what it's going to end up being called when it goes out into production. I apologize. It's the way I termed it in my head. So any other questions or comments, and then I can turn it back over to
Doug, you still have your hand up. Did you get your question in?
Yeah, I'm wondering if I can. So I know we're telling people there's no reason for a DEM file for 3.5. This is the number one reason we're seeing records not being submitted to the states. It's some of these DEM files are 4 or 5 years old. States have now issued new agency IDs for 3.5. This is becoming kind of a, I don't know if the other vendors want to talk about it. It's becoming kind of a pain point. It is the number one reason we're seeing records fail, is because of not sending an updated DEM file. And I'm not saying sending updated DEM files is the easiest and best thing in the world, but it is becoming kind of the go-to reason why agencies are having challenges submitting 3.5 data. And I would encourage vendors, if you're submitting a new agency, to send an updated DEM file. It is kind of that first line of issue resolution that we're seeing, and it's resolving a lot of issues. And I don't know if anyone else or any states has any comments on this. It's just something that we're seeing a lot of challenges with.
Yeah, Doug, this is Clay. That's a great point, right? If there are other modifications that are made associated with 3.5, for example, as you mentioned, licensing number or agency tracking number within the state, then yeah, those files will fail. EMS records submitted under an old DEM file will fail. So I don't know, Jen, that's a really good point, right? We've faced that all along, right? As states make these changes to kind of increase the efficiency of their work, right, and the interconnectedness among their systems, they'll make those changes, and then we don't hear about them, or maybe we do, right? And we try to promote the submission of new DEM files if there are changes to those.
And Lauri may want to jump in here, because I will say we've seen a significant increase in files that are failing because of DEM files. And I don't know if it's because numbers were changed, with version 3.5, or they've updated, or there's many new agencies that are starting to get into the EPCR and the reporting and catch up within their states. And I do believe that DEM files are important, because I believe that's going to be part of what solves some of these workforce questions that we're being asked that we can't answer on the national level. So I'm a huge proponent, and as Doug was talking, I was like, yeah, keep it up, because I do think there should be updates that come out on the DEM files much more regularly.
Lauri, do you have a comment? You deal with that on a regular basis.
yeah, I was just going to say that's very true. We do weekly see files failing, often related to DEM files. And so if you are curious what files are failing related to which DEM files in your state, you can look at your state data submission dashboard or reach out to me. I'd be happy to help show you how to run a report and see what which DEMs you're missing that are causing files to fail. And essentially what we've communicated to states is, although it's not required to update or resend 3.5 DEM files, it's encouraged to make sure you have submitted all your DEM files and that your agency list is up to date and facilities list and all those things. And so it's kind of part of the best practices, but we recognize it doesn't always happen, as there's a lot going on in the V3.5 transition. So reach out if you need help with that, but we would encourage that as a best practice.
You know, maybe related to that, as I'm just kind of thinking about this issue for the states, and the states can comment, right? But the DEM file is built, right, so that it can be updated on a regular basis, right? If an agency was to get a new vehicle, right, or personnel, it's meant so that it can be updated in that way to make sure that you as states have updated lists and descriptions and characteristics of your agencies, but maybe it's just not known which elements, if they do change, right, then an update to us will spur a new DEM file, right? So maybe the idea, the hash, maybe what might be valuable is for us to just put together kind of a quick white paper that describes under what circumstances a new DEM file should be submitted to support EPCR submissions to the National Repository. Does that make some sense? Because it's a little bit confusing, right? We promote the idea, yeah, send a new one every time it's updated. But there are some things, if you update, it will create a new record.
And version 3.5.
confusing?
Version 3.5 with the UUIDs will help with that for the DEM files. But yeah, let's take that back to the team and figure out a way to help guide that, maybe best practices or include that in the demographic guide or something along those lines.
Sounds good. Any other questions? All right, we'll pass it back to you, Ben.
Sure. And we still have a lot to cover, so I'll just really quickly mention, we've gotten a couple questions about some research data. I'm more than happy to help here at the TAC. If you have any questions about either the cube or the research data sets, please just open a support ticket and we'll work with you to get what it is you need. But I want to make sure we have enough time to get through the new NEMSQA performance measures and our interoperability update. So with that, I'm actually going to hand it back to Lauri, and then Sheree Murphy is here also from NEMSQA to talk about the new performance measures.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, Sheree, thanks for joining us today. We invited her, as many of you know, last week. There's a new group of performance measures that have come out. And so we invited Sheree here to share about that today and just make sure everyone is aware of that. Sheree, do you want to share your screen or do you just want to talk?
Yep, I'm going to share my screen. Just wanted to check and make sure I was able to talk.
Good to go.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going to share a couple things. So I won't take too much time either. I should be pretty quick because I don't want to duplicate what you can get from the webinar that we did last week. But we did release 10 new measures last week, and the pseudocode for those measures is posted on the website. This is a quick snapshot of what those measures are. For those of you that don't recognize them, they are a subset of the measures that NEMSQA developed as part of the Florida FAIR project. We went through a process starting in 2021 where we did a scoping review environmental scan for existing measures in the pre-hospital space, be it from national, regional, or state entities that were publicly available, and sort of refined that, removed the duplicating concepts, and went through a prioritization review to identify measures that NEMSQA wanted to endorse. And Dr. Jarvis does a great job of explaining that whole sequence of events and the process that we went through to do that. And so these are the 10 measures that the board approved to endorse. So I am going to new share real quick. Like I said, these are on the website. There we go. So when you're on the NEMSQA website, underneath measures, we do have the measures just listed out and what they are. And then we also have the measure technical documents. So when you get to this screen, we do ask that people just create a profile, which minimally just requires an email. And the reason we do that is so that we can have the information for folks who are using these measures and have downloaded the technical documents so that we can communicate with you when there are new measures. And so hopefully many of you got the email blast that we sent out last week, as well as updates to existing measures. That I will say is particularly important because when we did release these measures, somebody with eagle eye did note that we had a typo in our pseudocode where we had removed criteria for 2 of the populations that it should not have been removed from, and that was just a delete issue, like a copy paste issue. So we will be releasing a correction to that measure. So just a good case in point for why we ask folks to just create a profile. It's free. It doesn't require a paid membership, though we're happy to have you, but just so that we can communicate with you. So the new measures are on here, along with the measure worksheet that gives you all of the technical details needed to calculate the measures. So like I said, we did a webinar, it was recorded. Prodigy will post the archived version. We will post it on our website as well. And we will have a series of webinars that will look at each individual measure, provide both the evidence and rationale behind it, as well as some quality improvement strategies and ideas. So that's my update. Appreciate everyone who helped us to get here, and look forward to seeing the work that everyone does with these new measures.
Sounds great. Thanks, Sheree. And so it sounds like by signing up on your website, they can be notified about future webinars and also get a link to that Prodigy video once it's recorded or posted.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
We don't spam too much, so don't worry about that.
Great. All right, I will pass it back to you, Ben.
Great, thank you. And up next, I think, is Josh Legler with an interoperability update.
Okay, thanks, Ben. I'll just mention on the performance measures, there is a plan to add those new measures into the NEMSQA hosted performance measure service, where you can get all the national level performance stats on those measures. I think out of the 10 measures, I think it's like 8 of them are based on entirely on national data elements and can be queried from the national database. So that work is being scoped, hasn't been scheduled yet, but should be over the next year. All right, time for interoperability update. Let me share a couple slides with you. First, just an update on the EMS Interoperability Task Force, continuing to have the monthly meetings. And as you can see here, over the course of this year, we have pounded through a whole bunch of topics related to getting EMS interoperability with the rest of healthcare up and running. The last few months, we've been going through identifying the standards and profiles that are used specifically in certain steps of the workflow as EMS interacts with the rest of healthcare. And the topic that we're going to address in tomorrow's task force call will be the step where EMS gets the patient's medical history when they're trying to care for a patient on a 911 call. So up at that stage where they try to understand if they have, for example, allergies or current medications that they're taking, things like that. So at the technical level, how does a data system connect to a network, a health information network or health information exchange, and query for documents that would contain that information about their patient? So that's what we'll be tackling tomorrow. That call is scheduled for 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time and uses the same link as this call that we're on right now. In November, we'll tackle patient identification and record matching. We will take December off because of the ONC annual meeting and EMS Data Summit, and I want to briefly cover that. This was mentioned on the last NEMSQA call as well. So the ONC annual meeting is being held in December, on December 14th and 15th in Washington, D.C. In connection with that meeting and with support from ONC, we're holding an EMS Data Summit to be a follow-up to the summit that was held in January 2020. So many years ago now, a lot of stuff has happened between then and now. So the EMS Data Summit will be on Friday, December 15th from noon to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. For those who attend the ONC annual meeting, it will be at the same venue, and you can attend in person. And if you're not going to be there at the annual meeting, that's okay. The EMS Data Summit will be available for online participation as well. So you can register for the annual meeting and you can register for the EMS Data Summit using these two links here. I'll put these into the chat as soon as I finish up presenting in a second. The EMS Data Summit, what we want to do is really take, like, here's all the ground we've covered in the last almost 4 years since the last summit, but here's the things that are still kind of in the way for EMS interoperability at, I would say, more of the policy level than the technical level. So, for example, if EMS queries a health information network to get patient outcomes after the end of a call, that's something called an operations query, or the query purpose is operations. Well, other systems are more likely to respond to queries where the purpose is treatment, like I'm treating the patient, versus queries where the purpose is operations. I want to know what happened to the patient after the fact. So at the policy level, what can be done about that? And how do we make sure that EMS software, which is typically not part of ONC certification, is still trusted and allowed to participate in local, regional, and national health information exchanges or networks? So it's those kind of policy questions that we want to try to identify and find some paths forward at the EMS Data Summit. So that's coming up, and would encourage you to register if you have an interest in this area. And feel free to join us tomorrow on the task force call. Are there any questions? I don't see anything in the chat at the moment. I think I'll go ahead and turn it back over.
All right. Thanks, Josh. So next up are items from the Office of EMS, but I don't think Jeremy or Eric were able to make it today. I did not see them. So we'll head into open forum. Does anyone have anything they would like to discuss? You can either type it in the chat or should be able to come off mute.
Hey, Ben, I just did, this is Sheree from NEMSQA. I put in the chat, I forgot to mention that we're working on a project with NEMSQA around their airway EBG. And we have 5 new airway measures that are in draft for development for that project. And we have a public comment open, and this is a great group to get some feedback on that. So I put the link in the chat to the public comment it's not too long. It's only 5 measures, and would appreciate your input.
Great. Thank you so much. Anything else anybody has? All right. Well, we have a couple upcoming meetings, more V3 calls on October 25th, November 8th, and 22nd. And then I think that's everything we have. Clay, unless I missed anything, I think that wraps it up.
I agree. Yep. I don't know of anything that was missed.
Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you, everyone.